The Tour de France, all you need to know. Right about now, more than 150 of the world's most elite cyclists are charging up the Col de la Ussère in the French Pyrenees. Over a 3-week period, from August 29th to September the 20th, these aerobic beasts will traverse some 2,165 miles up and over 8 mountain passes. They'll spend more than 4,800 minutes in the saddle and reach speeds up to 63 miles per hour. They'll vie to bring their countries, teams, and sponsors to glory. But how does the world's most prestigious cycling race make money? Who sponsors the teams? And how does financing impact the rider's strategy? Welcome to TrendFluent. We're bringing you the latest, weirdest, and quite frankly, the best videos on YouTube. Before we proceed, be sure to gently hit the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so that you never miss our future uploads. The Tour de France is a historic and global phenomenon. Each year, fans from more than 180 countries turn in to watch the race. But despite this popularity, the economics of the sport are largely shrouded in secrecy. How does the Tour de France, an event that is free to the public, make money? How does the sponsorship model of a professional cycling team work? And how does this all affect how the riders choose to compete? The cycling's most important race was born out of financial necessity. At the turn of the 20th century, a French newspaper called L'Auto was struggling to stay afloat. The paper's staff was asked to come up with ways to increase circulation, and Gilles Lefebvre, a 26-year-old sports writer, suggested putting on the biggest cycling race the country has ever seen. Launched in 1903, the Tour de France was an immediate success. In its first year, the Tour nearly tripled L'Auto's circulation from 25,000 to 65,000 newspapers per day, enough to kill off their main competitor, Les Velus. Over the next 3 decades, this figure would increase 34 times. Up until the 1960s, the newspapers had monetized the Tour in a number of ways. They auctioned off stops on the route to the highest bidding cities. They charged companies a fee to follow riders in logo-plastered publicity caravans and throw out swag to spectators. They rented out physical ad space along the route, and they also allowed local brands to sponsor the Tour. The Tour's revenue stream was largely focused on monetizing the large crowds that gathered along the route. And early on, there were concerns that an overabundance of brands and sponsors would corrupt the purity of the sport. Despite this diversification of revenue streams, the Tour still operated with a deficit. But this forever changed when the race was taken over by its present-day owner, then privately owned French sports organizer Amaury Sports Organisation, or ASO, in 1965. The ASO pounced on advances in TV broadcast technology and focused on building out the Tour's global audience. Between 1980 and 2010, revenue increased 20 times, and the TV rights became a central part of its business model. Today, the Tour de France's revenue breakdown looks something like this. Town hosting fees, 5% of total revenue, are no longer a significant income source, but locales still shell out big bucks to be included on the route, which changes year to year. Sponsorships, 40%, are still critical to the race's bottom line and have significantly evolved. Among them, publicity caravans. Some 33 brands reportedly pay $250,000 to $600,000 each to be in the caravan. During the 21-day race, they collectively hand out 15 million items to the fans. T-shirts, laundry soap, key rings, meat sticks, the list goes on and on. The procession of 250 vehicles is 12 miles long and takes 45 minutes to pass by. Special jerseys. In the Tour, there are 4 special jerseys worn by riders: yellow, overall leader; green, best sprinter; Polkadot, best climber; and white, best young rider. The blank LCL spends $12 million per year to put its name on the yellow jerseys. Carmaker Skoda drops $4 million on the green jersey. Dozens of other partnerships. These range from Century 21 real estate firm running house giveaway promos to Tissot, a watchmaker, sponsoring time trials. TV broadcasting rights, 55%, have been sold in 186 of the world's 195 countries. Streaming the race requires 260 camera people, 35 vehicles, and 6 aircraft. One major deal with France Television is reportedly worth $25 million per year alone. So, how much money does the Tour de France bring in per year? The ASO is incredibly secretive about its finances, but over the years, researchers and French journalists have managed to piece together bits of data from public filings. Some sources estimate the Tour's revenue to be somewhere between $60 million and $150 million per year, about half of ASO's total annual income. Based on historical revenue data, the ASO has 21% profit margin. So, a very rough estimate would be that the organization enjoys anywhere from $12 to $30 million in profit annually from the race. But the organizer is only one moving part of the Tour de France. A second thriving economy has been built around the teams and riders who compete there. The business of professional cycling teams. This year's tour features 178 cyclists on 22 different professional teams. Like the tour itself, there's a code of silence surrounding these teams' budgets, but some information leaked to the public anyway. Riders' salaries account for the bulk of a team's budget, but gear costs are no joke. A video posted by Team Sky, since renamed Ineos Grenadiers, in 2016 outlined an absurd list of resources required for 9 riders during the Tour de France. This list includes 34 staff members, mechanics, drivers, sports doctors, nutritionists, 55 bikes, 6 per rider at $13,000 each, 80 spare wheels, 82 spare cassettes, and 57 spare chains, 4,360 energy gels and bars, and 3,300 water bottles, 40 bottles of massage cream, 100 rolls of bar tape changed every 4 days, 5 air purifiers, 9 AC units, and 9 dehumidifiers. All in, today's top-level cycling teams can easily exceed a $20 million annual budget. But these teams don't get any piece of the tour's revenue. They don't sell tickets as the event is free to the public. They don't even have their own merchandise. How do they fund all of this? Cycling teams have a very strange, if not deeply flawed, financial model. They have to rely on sponsors or donors to survive. Teams have all kinds of sub-sponsors for their bikes, gear, and nutrition, but 70% of their budget comes from the title sponsor, which pays a pro team somewhere in the range of $5 million to $15 million to name the team and plaster its logo all over the uniforms. The TV time these sponsors get often comes with healthy dividends. The sports intelligence firm Repucom analyzed 325 pro cycling sponsors in 2012's World Tour, a series of 38 races, including the Tour de France, and found that the average team was worth $88.4 million in media exposure to a title sponsor. The corporate sponsors of today's cycling teams are almost exclusively boring but stable conglomerates, insurance companies, telecommunication firms, commercial manufacturers, and there's a reason for all this. The rise of live broadcasting drew in international corporations that saw value in reaching a broader global market. The UCI, cycling's governing body, also implemented a new professional licensing system that drove up costs. Between 1992 and 2014, the average pro-level cycling team budget increased from $3.6 million to $15.5 million. The little guys were priced out. Now, the sport is seeing a new trend, a rise in wealthy benefactors and oil-rich countries that infuse teams with up to 3 times the capital of corporations. In 2019, for instance, the English industrialist Jim Ratcliffe, net worth $21.4 billion, purchased Team Sky and renamed it after his chemical firm, Ineos. He's since infused the team with a reported $47 million annual budget, heads and shoulders above any other pro team. Team Israel's startup nation depends on money that comes directly from Sylvan Adams, a Canadian real estate tycoon. Likewise, Michelton Scott relies on cash infusions from the Australian millionaire Jerry Ryan. This dependency on one rich individual can implode. When Russian billionaire Oleg Tinkov stepped away from funding his team, Tinkoff, in 2015, it folded. But some say it also causes a competitive imbalance that erodes the markability of the sport. But what about the riders, you ask? For most of the first half of the 20th century, pro cyclists were not paid a salary and had to scrape together an income by winning races. Prize money was their lifeblood. If that were still the case today, most riders would be screwed. The total prize money at the Tour de France is relatively small, at $2.7 million. The overall winner in the yellow jersey gets the bulk of that, $595,000, and each subsequent overall placing gets a diminishing amount, down to $1.2 thousand for 20th to 160th place. Winners of other jerseys, green, Polkadot, and white, take home between $24,000 to $30,000 each, and various smaller sums are given out for each stage for sprints, time trials, categorized climbs, and combativity. Let's for a second assume this was a rider's only source of income. The first few individual finishers would be okay for themselves, but bottom-tier finishers would make more working in retail for 3 weeks than racing in one of the most prestigious cycling races in the world. In reality, this prize money isn't an important factor in racers' income. In fact, the winner customarily shares it with the whole team. Today, their livelihood hinges on sponsorship dollars. The mandated minimum wage for a pro cyclist who participates in the Tour de France is $35,000, but many pros make 5 to 10 times that, and the top dogs like Peter Sagan and 4-time Tour winner Chris Froome command salaries of $6 million plus per year. This dependency comes at a cost. Riders must formulate their Tour de France strategy around maximizing visibility for sponsors. Winning the Tour is fantastic, but not necessary for brand exposure. Often you'll see lesser-known riders break away from the pack to give sponsors media time, and even if it isn't technically the best thing to do. And what role did coronavirus play in this year's Tour de France? The pandemic has strained not just the ecosystem of cycling sponsors, but the sport at large. Some riders have taken pay cuts and deferred as much as 70% of their salaries in a bid to keep their teams afloat through the crisis. Many in the cycling community feel that it's due time to reevaluate the sport's business model. What are your thoughts on the financial breakdown of the Tour de France? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching TrendFluent. If you enjoyed this video and you want to stay updated with the latest trends, please subscribe and share this video with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.